Great. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your patience as we work through some of the technical challenges here. So, as stated, I'm Nancy Minchillo, and I'm with JP Morgan Chase in supplier diversity, and thrilled to be here with you today. I'm going to kind of move through these kind of quickly because I want to get to sort of the meat of our discussion today. Diversity, equity, and inclusion at JP Morgan Chase is very important to us, both in the workforce, the workplace, and in our marketplace. Global supplier diversity resides in our supply chain organization, and we report to the CPO, and that's exactly where we need to be so that we can increase diversity and inclusion within our supply chain and create a supply chain that mirrors our customers' demographics. And we want to drive economic growth in the communities in which we do business. This is just some kind of fun facts, I think, about JP Morgan Chase and the organizations that fall under the company, JP Morgan Chase and Company. Of course, you're all familiar with our retail bank, Chase, JP Morgan, and then JP Morgan Asset Management. It's somewhat interesting, I think, around the households and the small businesses that we touch in our space. What value do we bring? And I think that's really important, right? About why are we here? We talked about what the role was, and the value is to create greater wealth in diverse communities, to obtain and share access to innovation. It's also important to us to be a differentiator with our competitors, and there's a brand reputation that's important to us as well. And then lastly, but certainly just as importantly, is our ability to attract and retain, tomorrow's employees, and frankly, today's employees that want to be part of an organization whose values match theirs. You all are familiar with this, I'm sure, relative to what is a diverse supplier, so we won't need to talk about that, but I will share with you our key partnerships, and you see Novova is certainly one of our key partnerships. It's very important to us, and we appreciate that. You may have seen that JP Morgan Chase announced in October of 2020 a commitment to racial equity of $30 billion over 5 years. And that's to provide economic opportunities in underserved communities, particularly in the Black, Hispanic, and Latino communities. But it's important to note that it's across our enterprise in mortgage lending, in our Chase for Business, really in all aspects of what we do. And even within supplier diversity, a commitment to include an additional $750 million with Black, Hispanic, and Latino-owned companies over the course of 5 years. And we're on our way to do that, in addition to all of the other diversity segments in which we engage, such as veteran-owned businesses. This is probably the most important slide I can share with you today, and that's our spend categories. So what do we buy and what categories? And you'll see the big category listing on the left, and then a little bit more detail included on the right that will give you an idea about the types of goods and services that we buy. So hopefully this is helpful to you as well. There's also, as you might imagine, minimum requirements. I'm sure you've heard this from other corporations around certification is certainly important. The ability to serve JP Morgan Chase on, at least a local, if not regional, national, or global basis, experience serving other large corporations. We all want referenceable business, right? We want to know who else you're supporting and who else is buying your goods and services. And then to be prepared to meet the requirements of a third-party oversight review. Now, the good news is because you're certified veteran-owned business, you've gone through some of this with your business documentation. But really, it's around reviewing capabilities and your systems, your processes, security, particularly cybersecurity, which won't be any surprise to any of you, particularly that we're a financial institution. And then your financial history and just other characteristics about your business. So one of the big areas that we really take a look at, and again, this won't be any surprise to anyone, is really around how you secure and store and manage data. Your own business continuity plan, due diligence and oversight for your supply chain as well. If you have suppliers that are supporting you, what requirements are they held to? And then industry standards like ISO, for example, risk assessment and the investment that you've made in controls for your company. And then, of course, the financial viability assessment. That's also very important. I think, too, it's helpful for us to consider what we consider, what does the company consider when, you do approach us about of goods or services that your company provides. So do we currently need that product or service? Do we need a new supplier in that category? Or, is it something that it's really not open for bidding at this time? Is there a competitive advantage to doing an RFP now? Or is the timing not right? And then for you all, are you competitive with the other suppliers in that category? Things like scalability, scope, geographic reach, those types of things. I think this is also helpful too. I hope it is, because as you would imagine, it's not instantaneous by any stretch of the imagination in terms of working with a big corporation like JP Morgan Chase. There are many phases, and I think this helps illustrate those different phases. We will ask you to register with us on our portal, and we do actually use the portal. I know sometimes we get, comments about individuals that register, but, it goes nowhere. We actually use our registration portal. As you can see, it is literally the pathway, if you will, the entrance ramp to this process. And then from there, we'll have our relationship managers conduct perhaps a secondary assessment, maybe even in an interview that would be helpful to you as well. And of course, certainly helpful to us also. From there, we actually work with diversity sourcing managers, and those are individuals within our supply chain who work in those categories that I showed you previously around an additional evaluation, possibly another interview, really to be sure that the opportunity that exists and the capabilities of your business align. So that's a really critical point, right? And then an introduction to the line of business, to the budget holder, to the decision maker, the individual management team that is actually buying either, again, the good or service that you're providing. From there is that third-party oversight that we talked about, where there's a risk assessment that's completed, and then a decision, and then hopefully, joining the supply chain. We want all of you to register with us, and here's a great way to get that started. And it's pretty straightforward. It's jpmorganchase.com and then /supplier diversity. And if you'll scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see where you can register with us. You can also, of course, email us, but we're going to ask you to go ahead and register with us as well. And we would also, you may be asked, how did you hear about us? So if you would, put Novoba, it may be listed there for you. If not, there's a drop down. It may not be listed. If not, other, go ahead and let us know that. And then as a benefit of your registration, you will stay visible with us, which is great because, as you saw, the stair-step approach to the requirements, it's a very fluid process. So just because something's not immediately available doesn't mean that it won't become available somewhere down the road. So we want you to stay visible within it's actually a SharePoint. And then you're on our radar, so you'll be eligible to receive invitations to participate in internal events, matchmakers, networking events, those types of things. And then access to education or development opportunities. The portal is really our way to know about you and about, your company capabilities and, what your company can offer to JP Morgan Chase. And then the other thing that Mimi wanted us to talk about was our podcast series. And tomorrow we're actually recording the 5th and final series. It's part of our educational and development pillar. And it's a podcast series that serves as a space for veteran entrepreneurs like yourself just to have access to some tools and tactics, probably some shared challenges that all of us have faced, and particularly you all as business owners. It's really a podcast series. We call it Mission Business, Managing the Business Landscape with Veteran Entrepreneurs of Color. We feel like the challenges that are faced are also faced by veteran business owners, regardless of ethnicity, but we just felt like it was worth exploring that. And we talked about, for example, the importance of and benefits of certification. We also had 2 podcast episodes on access to capital. We call it Getting Money Part 1, and that was a look at sort of the early stage business, how to go about getting that access to capital. And then we also did Part 2, which was perhaps for a more evolved or developed business owner around the other processes, tools, sources, if you will, for gaining and obtaining capital. And a little bit of the kind of what to be cautious about, what to look for, things to question, those types of things. And then we also did a podcast series an episode on the power of the strong network, just like you all are doing today by being part of this webinar. So, building your network, expanding on it, leveraging the network that you already have in place. And then lastly is the podcast that we are going to record tomorrow, which is around resiliency. And we call it Marching Forward Through Adversity. So it's keeping it going for business owners when things get tough, and a conversation with our guest speakers about how they kept their business going in difficult times. And certainly over the last 2 years, right? If not in some cases for others even longer, I think everyone's been challenged with some degree of adversity. So we feel like this will be a conversation that all of us can relate to, but particularly as veteran business owners, how your colleagues have overcome challenges that they have faced. And, just some suggestions and ideas about how to retain, your resiliency and how to keep resilient as we move through challenging times. And with that, I'm going to pause. And I don't know if we wanted to open it up for questions or how we wanted to proceed. Mimi?
Yeah, that would be great. Do we have any questions, comments, or Nancy? You can share in the chat any questions that you might have or unmute yourselves.
And I see on the call we have some of our podcast guest speakers on the call with us, so that's great. We've had, I think, a really good experience. This was the first time that JP Morgan Chase, from a supplier diversity perspective, has done a podcast. So this was new for us. But I feel like it's been a great learning experience, and hopefully for you all as listeners and, as fellow veteran business owners, hopefully you will find them beneficial as well. And they are on the Navoba website. They're posted there if you'd like to take a listen.
Yeah, there's a special podcast tab that you can go to. And Stacy said it was lots of fun.
Thank you, Stacy. We really appreciate it. Heather also joined us, and there may be others. I apologize if I overlooked anybody that has been on one of our podcast episodes with us, but really appreciate all the help. And the producer as well is a veteran business owner, so we appreciate that.
Nancy, is it okay if I go ahead and share your email with everybody?
Absolutely, you bet. Yes, definitely. Thank you. You sure may.
Yeah.
Nancy, this is Bob Alexander with Novus Professional Services.
Hi, Bob.
I had a question for you. Is your supplier diversity, does that deal with IT staff augmentation also?
Yes, yes. Yes, in that category slide, and I know we went through all that pretty quickly. So, but on that category slide, so the big category, if you will, and it can be, there's two of them actually that this could fall into, kind of depending on what the capability is, the services, et cetera. But there's that big technology category. And sometimes some of our IT staffing falls into that, but there's also the professional services, which staffing definitely can fall into as well, because there might be staff augmentation services that aren't necessarily technical. And so that's where, that comes into play. Sometimes there can be other types of staff augmentation that falls under professional services.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for opening up for questions. Appreciate it.
Hello, ma'am. This is Kenneth.
Hi, Kenneth.
Hey, I just have a testimony about Chase Bank. We opened our first e-commerce site, and we thought it was great until we had become a victim of a chargeback. Because someone had purchased some hardware from us, and we operate in good faith that people on the up and up. Unfortunately, this person decided to receive the hardware but not pay for it. And we were in a dilemma as far as trying to have our merchant services piece in our e-commerce site. Without that, we have a dead site. So thanks to us being at Chase, they worked it out, and we have Chase Merchant Services e-commerce. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you for that, Kenneth. And of course, I had absolutely nothing to do with that, but I'm so pleased that, that did work out. And you do bring up a great point, and we hear this a lot, and I didn't necessarily weave it into the presentation, and maybe, we kind of take it for granted. It goes without saying, but you alluded to it, that is around the relationship. And whether it's your bank, whether it's your suppliers, your customers, but in this case, I'll speak to that, banking relationship, and that can be on, the merchant side, as you mentioned. It could also be if you're working with one of our lenders. And again, I'm speaking, real broadly here, but I think the business relationship, and that goes for supplier diversity too, the relationship that we can build and establish is really critical. And I thank you for bringing that up, Kenneth. I mean, I'm glad you had a good result. That's great. But I think that is a good reminder to all of us that business really is about relationships. Yes, it's dependent on, a good or a service, and, how we can work together. That's always important, obviously, but that relationship that is built, I think is really critical. So thank you for mentioning that. Like I said, I'm glad you had a good outcome. Thank you.
And in regards to that conversation, back in September, we did have a specific MFM focused on funding veteran businesses and understanding banking SOPs. So how to get the most from your bank and banker. And we had John Kadawa from JP Morgan Chase that
Yes.
came on and really talked about building a relationship with your banker. And so his position is specifically, I think he's in Texas, but there are
He
people
is.
like him across the country that want to get to be your friend and understand your business and develop a relationship with you, not just when you need financial help, but prior to, because they want to understand who you are and what you're doing so that they can be your advocate. And so if you weren't able to join for that particular session, it is on the Novoba YouTube, and I believe it's still on our website. So it was September 13th. But John would be very happy to connect you to the representative in your area. I know they're not everywhere, but he could connect you to the closest person. But I think, the testimony from Ken and the commitment from JP Morgan is just amazing. And I very happy to have JP Morgan as a partner.
Thank you, Mimi. And I'm sharing a slide here that just describes just that. And that's exactly, as you said, John is, a business consultant. And this is for everyone. You don't have to be a customer. It's really a service that we're providing just to help business owners kind of figure out, assess, if you will, what exactly they need, or in this case, what you all need. And as Mimi said, even if it's not John, he'll be able to refer you to the appropriate individual that could help you, as can I, so that, again, it could just be an advisory call. It could be, you could set up a meeting. I mean, there could be all kinds of it could take different forms and different shapes. But the point is that, they are available to you. So hopefully that's helpful as well. And I love the fact that, you don't have to be a customer. It's just, they're there to help.
His name there, I'm going to put his email if any of you want to reach out.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, or if you need me to send the recording to any of you, just let me know. Keep this in now. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
Nancy, you have the most calming and steady voice. It's just nice to listen to.
Oh,
Appreciate
thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Anything that, since we have a little time, anything that you would like to see from corporations like JP Morgan Chase? I'm probably opening up a can of worms here, but since we're all together and we have you, on the line, I mean, we want to hear from you. So what would be beneficial? What's something that might be, and Mimi, I don't mean to steal your thunder. You may do this separately aside from this.
No, go
these
ahead.
types of webinars, but what's missing? What can we do better as corporate members?
Hey, Nancy, quick question for you.
Sure.
Hey, this is David with Arnard Construction, and we don't necessarily play in your space, but the federal government and a lot of large companies, they have scorecards based on the different classes, as you mentioned before. Just want to know if you had a scorecard there, and how are you doing with veteran companies?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. So always looking to do more. We don't, it's interesting. We publish sort of aggregate data, and we keep, some of the segments, if you will. Of course, we track all that internally. But great question. We're always looking to do more, really, with all segments. I know I mentioned that, we're looking to increase our spend with Black and Hispanic-owned businesses. Certainly, that could be a veteran, that could be a woman. And it's not to say, it's not at the exclusion of other diverse segments either. So I want to be very cautious about that. You know, we'll continue to work with veterans, with people with disabilities, LGBT, small businesses, you know, kind of runs the gamut, right? But the main thing is, I think we're always just looking for businesses who can, you know, support the work that we're doing, and whether it's a product or a service that we need. So thank you for that. Any other questions?
Bill, I don't know if you're talking to us.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Just a quick question, Nancy, what I was trying to say is, I always ask on these, what about, my thing is always getting stuck in what I call supplier diversity purgatory portal, it's the portal purgatory.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
a struggle of when to properly follow up. So what's the right time to not be a pest? I don't want to be a pest. I just want to be, respectfully persistent.
It's a great question. And it's an art, right? As much as a science. And I know every corporation is different. But I think, once you do register with us, you will be notified via the system. It will be a system notification, but you will receive that. And then I don't know if you got to see that kind of that stair step approach to, what's next. So I think if you haven't heard anything further around an opportunity, with a business relationship manager or somebody from our sourcing team or me or, someone reaching out to you, I'm going to say 6 months. I mean, it's every scenario is different, right? And every company is different in how they approach that. But I think, once you get that system generated response, then, it can't hurt to reach out. Certainly, some people may prefer quarterly. So, it varies, but I think you'd be safe certainly with a 6-month approach.
Great, thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Hey, Mimi, can I add to that? This is Brian with Shell. Nancy, great
Sure,
answer
Brian.
and great response. And thanks for JP Morgan. I got to go by your bank today I like the old way of going to the bank and doing something. So
I do too, Brian. I
so
still walk in. Yeah.
so I'll look forward to that. To the question around, and who was it that just asked that question around what's the appropriate way to follow up? It doesn't matter because I know it's probably on the minds of most folks. Even I have to wonder about that when I'm business developing inside Shell, where I have to go to a line of business and say, what are you buying? Why are you buying it? Are you willing to spend money? Whatever that is we have to work that little dance with them because they're busy running the business. One thing I heard from a peer the other day was, you don't forget you can communicate with those that you're chasing for business and share something that they wouldn't have information on. So if you're in a specific industry, if you chose to share some latest information or technology or something like that may not have a direct connection to your business, but it's a direct reflection on what you know and what you have access to. That way you're giving them something that they can read on their phone while they're waiting for something, and then you're top of mind. And it's not you saying, hey, remember we talked a month ago and I'd really like to follow up or follow through with you. So, and I said that because I was sitting here thinking about, Nancy, the message you mentioned around relationships. And I think we forget that relationships take a lot of time because you're really cutting into someone else's world and the timing may not be right. So your ability to step in there every so often just to share something that they may not have access to get to, that they can go, okay, and then they'll remember that you shared it. So that's just one trick that I would suggest. Maybe take your top 2 or 3 customers that you're after and maybe start to develop something like that, a rhythm like that. And then maybe they'll call you out of the blue then the next time because they thought of you top of mind.
Great advice. I love that. Thank you, Brian. Just any little, like you said, anything that's pertinent, that's relevant, that you could share, that's great. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, I would like to remind you that following MFM today, we have the database training for both our veteran businesses as well as our corporate allies. So immediately after MFM at 3 o'clock will be the veteran business training from 3 to 3:30. And then from 3:30 to 4 will be our corporate ally training. If you're not certified or if you're not a corporate ally, we still invite you to join the information session so that you can learn a little bit more about the database. It's a perfect opportunity for our veteran businesses to see what information is being shared with the corporations. Perfect opportunity to update your profiles. Same thing for our corporations. You know, you can update your profiles, add some more information. But it's a good training. We'll be doing these quarterly. So if you have not received the invitation, it was in the newsletter. So if you didn't get it and you would like the Zoom information, just send me an email and I'd be happy to share that with you. Nancy, do you have anything else? Nancy Mincello or Nancy Connor?
I'm good. I just want to thank everybody for their time. I really appreciate it.
Good job, Nancy. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing all of you later on in your appropriate session for training for the veteran businesses on how to use our database, as well as the corporate allies and how to use the database and keep your profile current for our veterans to know how to reach you. So thank you very much. Great job, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you to everybody for joining.
Yes,
and
thanks.
We appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.